Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is Palm Sunday.
Yes, it is. It is April 10th, 2022. And this is Palm Sunday in the Christian tradition. And our topic today is trials and tribulation. Why suffering? I'm going to start with a reading from Ernest Holmes, founder of our movement. And it's about trials and tribulations. And he says, "It is easy enough to see how one who is surrounded by confusing situations might feel inadequate to cope with them, and unconsciously might seek some place of peace or retirement where nothing could bother him. A completely integrated person is one who has learned to meet everything as it comes along and make the best of it. When we say one should make the best of things, we do not mean that one should grin and bear it, or even suffer it be so. For we know there is a way to meet every situation through the use of the power greater than ourselves. This is done by knowing there is nothing to be afraid of, that we are one with an infinite partner, and that there is nothing in the universe designed to harm us. Confidence and faith in a power greater than ourselves must be generated.
I don't know what's
We
going on.
must meet every situation, and it comes with faith and trust. We must meet every situation as it comes with faith and trust. There is nothing to be afraid of. Underneath are the everlasting arms." I think that's very comforting.
It is.
Underneath are the everlasting arms of God always.
I'm reminded as you were reading that, of a baby is born typically, hopefully and healthily, with 2 legs and 2 feet and 10 toes and little hands and arms and all of that, and they seem to be totally equipped, and they can't use any of them. And they're rubbery. They bend in ways they're not supposed to bend in order to walk, and so I think the message in that, to me anyway, is that we are born with the facility or the capacity to do great things, and then we have to learn actually how to do them. And so many of our trials and tribulations really are part of the learning curve. And I don't know where we got the idea. We seem to have often gotten the idea that at a certain point in life, it gets easy, or there's no more needing to learn how to walk or how to crawl or how to hold on to a thing or how to let go of it. And the truth is,
or no more pain.
Yeah, and the truth is that the pain that we felt when the doctor, first said good morning to us by slapping us on the behind, which is a little cruel, that pain was the first possible pain that we felt on the outside. And where did we think it would suddenly go away? So if we include in our lives that trials and tribulations are classes that we need to take and pass, it's a very different way of understanding our lives than the way we often do, which is, why is this happening to me? This is awful.
Well, not to mention the mother who's giving birth.
Do
That's
mothers-
not exactly a picnic either.
They feel pain?
I must say though, my second child I did with natural childbirth, and it's very painful while you're going through the delivery process, very painful, and you're aware of it. But interestingly enough, nature has some fascinating chemicals that flood the body afterwards, because without anesthesia afterwards, I was up, getting dressed, putting on my makeup, brushing my hair. I felt great. I was energized. And a nurse even came in and said, "There must be something to this natural childbirth, because I never felt that good afterwards." But it's another example of the agony and the ecstasy that we experience in this thing we call human life on earth. We'd all like it to be pain-free, but unfortunately, we have one challenge after the other that can feel painful. I wanted to share with you a reading from Matthew 11:28-30. And this is Matthew having Jesus say, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I wanted to bring that up because in any of our challenges, when we're afraid or in pain, the solution is always faith. Faith and a power greater than us that wants no harm to come to us, and our learned ability to connect with that power, with that God, with that spirit, whatever you want to call it, because that comforts us in prayer and meditation. When we go within, we get reinforced with courage and strength, and knowing that there is a power for good in the universe. It's greater than we are, and we can use it.
And that power exists inside as well as outside, that power is everywhere
Exactly.
present.
Exactly.
And I wanted to speak to that a little bit. And one of the things I've been looking at recently is our DNA. And our DNA is a gold mine of possibility for us. We have what they used to call junk DNA, and it's not junk DNA. They didn't know what it was for.
It was floating around in the cell and didn't
Right.
seem to be connected or part of the double helix.
Right. So, but what we found out is that it responds to the requests that we make for the changes that we want to see in our lives. It literally is listening to, in its own way, to the vibration of the thoughts that we're having that would tell it where it's needed. Imagine then that you have within you a gold mine of healing, and that whatever the condition is that you're dealing with, it's available to assist you no matter what the trauma, no matter how difficult. The first thing that you need to do or can do is to say, I want to unlock the door to infinite possibility for healing. I want to unlock the door for that genetic possibility. Now, what I'm saying is what I've discovered is it's very difficult to pray without believing. And so, because praying without believing is simply allowing the delusion to manifest. But when you pray knowing that there is a system within that actually can work for you, then it's really, praying is unlocking the door. Praying is unlocking the lock that allows you to access huge amounts of energy and huge amounts of intelligence and huge amounts of everything you need.
Exactly. And so I want to get back to this thing about Holy Week.
Yeah.
That this is Palm Sunday. This is the day in the Christian tradition where Jesus and his disciples entered Jerusalem. They came to have a Passover experience. At the time, I believe you could only celebrate Passover if you were in the city of Jerusalem. So they came to do that. And Jesus was greeted by people on the street with palms, over his head, saluting him and singing and celebrating him because he is known for his miracles. And so the week begins with great celebration and triumph. And so as the week goes on, things deteriorate seemingly. And as the story goes that we have, the first place he went was to the temple, and with the cat o' nine tails chased out the moneylenders. Now the moneylenders were there to sell people sacrifices. They sacrificed little birds and things on the altar to, in their tradition and belief, please God. But he did not like, it was like commerce taking place in the temple. So you can imagine that got the ire of the local heads of the Jewish faith, that here's someone with a cat o' nine tails. It's sort of like a Will Smith event, at the Oscars, chasing out the moneylenders. And so that got their attention, and they didn't like it. And so things deteriorated through the week that got to on Friday, which was supposedly the day of the crucifixion. Great trial and tribulation. And many of us, especially as children, said, well, why did Jesus have to go through that? It pains us to think of him having those trials and tribulations. But it seems that trials and tribulations always precede great transformations, great positive events, like the resurrection. I have a quote from Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who says, one must have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. Your chaos is your opportunity to have your own dancing star. For every question, there is an answer. For every weakness, there is a strength. For every lack, there is abundance. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So again, we all think we would like to just experience harmony and love and laughter and wonderful times. But the truth is, the hard times, the tribulations, make our good times far better. They make them far more wonderful and celebratory.
Yeah,
I want to tell the story about the little boy. Can I tell the story
no,
about the little
no,
boy?
no, I don't want to.
I gotta tell you this funny
I've heard
story.
all the stories. I don't remember stories.
Okay, it was Palm Sunday, but because of a sore throat, 8-year-old Billy stayed home from church. When the family returned home, they were carrying several palm fronds. Johnny asked them what they were for, and his father said, people line the streets with them to herald Jesus. And they held them over his head as he walked by. Geez, Johnny fumed. The one Sunday I don't go and he shows up. So I remember too many times collecting the palms, and it was Palm Sunday is a very celebratory time. But of course, it's the beginning of Holy Week when we go into those trials and tribulations, ending with next week, Easter, or the celebration of the resurrection.
I was working on a piece of artwork the other day, and the new piece behind me is something I just created. I was working on a piece of artwork, and I'd spent probably at least 10 or 12 hours on it, and it was really coming along fine. And I was almost at completed, and Judith said something about, let's have something to eat or whatever. And I said, okay. And I went to save it, and I clicked cancel. And so I deleted it. I had 10 hours of work in a piece, and I deleted it. And I couldn't believe that that was gone. I didn't say anything about it because what are you going to do? And so that was a trial and tribulation. So then I went back and I decided to reinvent the piece. And in the process of reinventing it, I discovered some things that I hadn't seen before that I wanted to take a slightly different direction. And the end result of that was a greater victory than I would have had I stuck to the original piece. To me, that's a metaphor that we often embark on something, then when it goes bad, they seem to be obsessed with the bad that happened, rather than, that's interesting. I wonder what's next. And I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. If we could simply hold back on the judgment of the condition and allow it to be whatever it is, we then could move forward with what's next, rather than feeling bad about the thing that didn't work or that broke down. And how many of us in our lives have tried something, really tried it, and it really failed, only to have something much better than that show up in a not so far future. I know for me, that would have been a marriage, clearly, that could have, if it had worked a little better, I would have stayed in it, and it never would have been good. And so how many of us have had to go through a significant loss in order to be able to have a significant gain?
Yes. And the story that was made up about Jesus's crucifixion was that he died for our sins. And it was with that occasion that then we had the ability to go to heaven, because Jesus was Jewish, and the Jewish people had no concept of going to heaven when you die. And so, but they did have a strong belief in those sacrifices. Remember at the temple, sacrificing the birds or lambs or whatever, to please God. They were like compensation for their sins. So it would be normal that they would because the early Christians were Jewish, and so that they would make up that story. Well, he must have died for our sins. He's the sacrifice for our sins. I don't think that's true. We don't believe that. We believe, that it happened for whatever reasons, but it was not for our sins, and we did not kill Jesus. So we view it simply as a transformation, that was the way that it was chosen to happen. And So we have to look at what we view. We view him as the great example of knowing that even though there's pain now, this is not the truth of things. This is not eternity. This is a temporary, painful experience,
Mhm.
and we get through with it. And he knew because he said, "This day will I meet with you in heaven," to the thieves that were crucified with him. So we too have to know in our hardships that we'll get through it, and something better is waiting for us.
Well, one of the things that comes about for me when I think about all of that too is the message of eternality. That,
Yes.
you can certainly decide that when you die, you go to a place that's mostly white, unfortunately, and where you have to wear mostly white and you eat vegetarian. But you also could say that we go into a dimension of time and space that is far grander and far more amazing than anything we ever could have imagined. And that this is, Ramdas says, that the death is graduating from the fourth grade and, and taking off slippers that are a little bit tight, or shoes that are tight. And so thinking about that is important for us to realize that this is not a life for punishment, it's a life for learning. And the future is not just the future that we can see, it's a future even greater than that, and that we are all connected and will be connected forever. One of the things I started doing a long time ago when I realized that we live more than one life is being nicer to people, because I realized that they were going to be in my life forever rather than just for a short time.
That's interesting. That's funny. I want to read something that Ernest Holmes has to say. He says, Jesus spoke of the joy which he had and which he desired us to have, that our joy might be full. There's music at the center of everything. The melody is real. We must uncover the song and permit it to saturate our souls with joy. The ancients said the wind whispers and the leaves clap their hands and the morning stars sing together. Spiritual living is not a droll affair. It is the triumphant entry of the soul into the secret place of the Most High, where the scroll of life is inscribed with joyous words. I am the Lord thy God in the midst of thee. Ernest Holmes. So that's what we know in the midst of our trials and tribulations, that the truth of us is that we're spiritual beings. We're having a temporary physical experience, and sometimes that physical experience is hard and painful and confusing. And we take solace in knowing that the divine is within us. We are connected to it. We can talk to it. We can use that power that is universal to affirm the truth, to direct, if it's our own health, that junk DNA to do its work to create healing and wholeness. We know that healing can happen in an instant. It does not require doctors or Western medicine, that it is an idea in spirit and in that part of ourselves that then can manifest in the body as perfection. So know that that's always true about yourself, about your loved ones. If you're having any experiences that are apparently incurable.
And if you haven't unlocked that DNA, if you haven't unlocked that healing, it's the same as being in the fourth grade and waiting to get to the fifth grade and wanting to jump a class or wanting to jump a year. You can't. So it's possible that the reason that it hasn't happened is not because of a lack of faith, but because the lesson hasn't been learned yet. Whatever it is here that you're here to do hasn't been fully experienced. And I think, again, it's so important for us to say, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm not liking it, but I don't know what it's about, rather than why is this happening to me? Why are things so difficult? They're difficult because they are. And that's the only way you could learn. I'm thinking as you were talking about going to a movie where I pay money to sit for an hour or two and watch a movie. And during the worst part of the movie, I find myself feeling the feelings of whoever the protagonist is and experiencing it, but knowing there'll be an end and wondering how that's going to happen. I find myself watching a movie without judgment, but with constantly looking for, this is interesting, I wonder what's next. And even when the hero is shot, I wonder, is he going to come back? I wonder, what's he going to do next? I don't have the same judgments for myself as I do, or as I have more judgment for myself than I do for a movie. But this is really, like a movie that we're involved in, only we were the one who constructed, we wrote it, we're the editor, we're the director, we're the producer. And so if you could imagine that you're the director, producer, and creator of the movie that you're starring in, then it would be great for you to be the best star you could be, rather than, I don't want to play this part anymore. And play the part, play all the parts, play them with your heart and soul. And at the end of all of it, what will have come of it is whatever you learn from it. And if you talk to any great actors who embody the parts they're playing, they will tell you how much they learned and how rich the experience was. Even though it was just a movie, they will tell you, it changed my life. And so why not allow life to change you?
And we were talking earlier about, people we know who
Yeah.
had major life crises that could have just thrown their whole life in the toilet. One was Dr. Joe Dispenza. Here he was, a young chiropractor just starting his practice, healthy. He was in a triathlete event when he was struck by a car and dragged and broke his backbone in so many places that the only thing they could do is, the medical community, was to put a rod in it, and then he wouldn't have much mobility. And he said no, and lay on his massage table face down for months, visualizing a completely healed and well backbone. And guess what? Got it. Created it.
But that experience lasted for under a year. The impact of that experience transformed his life into the life he's living now.
Right, but where he's helping millions of people
Doc-
do the same thing.
Dr. Greer, who's become a very well-known doctor, who's spent a lot of time examining the extraterrestrial world, he died at 17. Who dies at 17 when they're healthy? He came back, but he came back with a mission for life that would shape his life. He's in his 60s now, and although you wouldn't know it looking at him, but his entire life from that tragedy was transformed into possibility and into greatness. And so I think that's so true for so many of us. When I heard a little bit more about Dr. Greer's life, that he grew up much like I did in a lot of poverty, with a lot of lack, and transformed his life into something that is not in any way connected to lack. But without that experience, what would it be like? Without your experience, who would you be?
Without the hardship.
Yeah.
Without the hardship, where would be the glory? So let's know that our hardships are just steps along the way, steps along the path. So join us now in a closing prayer, and let's go within and know that there is that part within us that is part of the divine. It is everywhere present in all of life, including within our very selves.
I take the key. I take the key of life and I unlock that lock that allows me to have all of the good that is mine to claim, all of the healing that is mine to claim, all of the riches that are mine to claim. I unlock that lock and say yes, and I am grateful, and with great gratitude, I move forward.
Knowing that the best is yet to come. We give great thanks, we release, and together we say.
And so it is.
And so it is.